we're talking about the stages. And so it was the Paleo-era stage, the Archaic stage, and the transition. At the end of the transition, it goes into what is called the woodland stage. That's a very interesting stage, and pottery was used during the woodland stage. And the earliest pottery is Vinette 1, which is this pot here. I'm very fortunate to have this pot. But the earliest pottery shows fragments of the stone pots that are crushed up and used for grit, for tempering material in the earliest pottery of the end, at the end of the transition. So that's, the transition signifies pre-ceramic and transitioning into ceramic, okay? So that's the story there. One thing I didn't mention, by the way, that probably is worthy of mentioning, is the Owasco culture, now going back to the Lamoka points. Those people made a lot of these stones with these grooves in them. In the nomenclature, you'll see them referred to as sinew stones. Well, I have a theory. I've espoused this theory for some time. Sinew, if you're a hunter, you know when you take butcher a deer, for example, you can gather sinew, but you can't size sinew by drawing it across the stone like that, because what happens is sinew will fray. You have to slice the sinew and strip it that way to make it thin enough to be able to use. So if, besides that, sinew isn't hard enough to create grooves like this in these stones. These are called sinew stones, but I call them a braiding stone. But they're very prevalent in the Owasco culture, but also in the Owasco culture, which is prevalent, are these teardrop-shaped objects down in here. Now, if you had one of those in hands, you would see that the lobate end is all ground down. It's all ground down, and I postulate that those objects, when they were being ground down, that's what made these grooves. The two things come from the same culture. So these are braiding stones that were used to grind down these stones, which are called stracolates, which I think is also a misnomer. Now, Dr. Ritchie, the former archaeologist, preeminent, New York State, the master, I had a chance to talk to him about this. Now, I am, back in those days, we were talking 35, 40 years ago, I was like green around the ears compared to him. He was the master, I was the, nothing. And I said, Dr. Ritchie, I said, I've read all of your accounts about the Owasco culture. And you're calling these things sinew stones and stracolates, but stracolite, you implied that it's used to strike against an iron pyrite to start a spark for a fire. But there's no inventory that says anything in your diggings, nor in mine that I've dug, where I found any kind of iron pyrites. Well, he said they disintegrated in the ground. I said, well, I don't think that's right. And then that was my mistake. When I said that, he got very excited because I was actually challenging him. Mm-hmm. And he got very excited and started speaking in a very high, feminine pitched voice. And I knew that I had to back off, which I did, and that was the end of that. But I believe that these stones with the ground edges are flint knapping tools. Now, I have taken real so-called stracolites, put the pointed end into wooden handles, and use them for pressure flaking and fine work, making the edges sharp on knapping a projectile point, or even making notches on, and I've done it without any damage to these. Once that's ground off, you would have to smash it before you could break it. By pressuring it, you can't break it. And it works beautifully as a knapping tool. Now, I think antler tines were used too, and certain bone tools were used for knapping too. But I think that that's what those are. So there's a little thing there that's a postulation on my part, and it's been not well received. I don't care. That's okay. These are just cash blades. These are Genesee points. Genesee points are wonderful, wonderful points. These are Otter Creeks. They're side notch, rectangular ears, and somewhat curved, usually, or slightly curved bases. They're the earliest of the archaic points. They go back, well, 8,500 years. I found a cache of those. I want to move over here now. These up here, all those are Otter Creek. And I found them where you can put your hand over them all in a shelter right up the road here, a rock shelter. Not caves, there's no caves here. We're not in limestone area. We don't have caves. We have rock overhangs that hang out. And sometimes they're big enough where you can get underneath and have shelter. Well, I dug this one, and here's the dig here. This is the shelter. These are the layers we found. This is a spatial distribution here. Okay. And this is the cache right here of those points right there. And they were all laying in the same position. All the points were aligned like this. Now, think about that. Here again, you have to postulate. If they were in a bag, they'd be helter-skelter. The bag would be, they'd be every different. The bag rotted away and there they were. No, not in this case. They were all lined up. They were on shafts. The shafts rotted away and left the stone points all in the same direction. It was the only place in the rock shelter where it was damp.
Dang.
Yeah. So, you know, that's just the way it was. But a lot of this material, all this is from the rock shelters, and you can see some of this is perishable material because rock shelters, the soils were neutralized, weren't acidic, and they were dry, and it preserved what otherwise would have been perishable materials. This is a great piece here. This is a drift, a baton that's used for striking and making preforms and stuff like that. It's one of the flint knapping tools, but it's not a fine tool, not a tool for fine work. It's just for blanking out rough things. Pretty interesting stuff.
Well, what are these spikes here? What are those?
They're all awls, bone awls.
Bone awls.
Yep. And by the way, this is coprolite, which is human feces. Preserved by the dryness. And that piece up there, that is obviously a clamshell, but it's a special clamshell. Found right out here in one of the rock shelters, salt water. Saltwater clamshell. I took that up to Dr. Harmon, who's an aquatic biologist. I knew it was a saltwater shell, but I wanted to have the expert identify it. And he said, yep. He said, that's salt water. I found it right up here with all the other archaeological materials, right out of the rock shelter up here. It's amazing stuff. This is amazing stuff. Now, these are ulus. Mostly the ulus are associated with the Eskimo cultures, but these Otter Creek people had ulus, and they're knives. And they're found all, this came from Great Bend, right down the river here. Well, down by Windsor.
Will they do skin with them or something?
No, they're knives.
Oh, okay.
Well, you could skin.
Yeah.
Smaller ones you could skin, yeah. You could skin with them.
Cool.
But they're considered to be knives. And this is just an array of various kinds of axes. There's grooved axes, 3/4 groove, full groove, and barbed axes. And then the ones without grooves are called celts. Celts, when you look at, if you were to break one in half, they're lenticular in cross section. Sometimes people misconstrue a celt when it really is an adze.
Okay.
Because they look the same, except an adze is flat on the top and curved on the bottom. So it's plano convex. That's an adze. And the only other variation would be gouges. And the gouge is easy to see because there's a gouge going up. So they're all different kinds of these.
Those huge ones.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's amazing. I don't know what practical sense they would have.
I was wondering.
It might have been just made for show, like,
Okay.
you know. These are stone bowls. And now we're coming over to the area where is an atlatl. This is an atlatl. The stick right here. And the spear shaft butts into that like these. The spear shaft would butt into there. And then spear shaft would come along like this. You'd have holding it up here. Spear would be out there, and you come back with it like this and sling it. Retain this, it forces it forward. This tool, if you will, I read accounts where when the conquistadors came into Spain, into Florida, the people down there were using these atlatl weights. They were throwing the spears right through the armor of the Spaniards. I read where the impact thrust by using the atlatl as much as a 45 caliber bullet. Now, I don't have any of these that are from this region. These are Papua New Guinea, but the principle is exactly the same. And these are not, well, these are historic, but they're early historic. And here they have what they call atlatl weights. Now on here you'll see there's a stone right there, a little thing right there. The stone was put up on the atlatl, not on these, but here in this part of the world, the atlatl had these atlatl weights. They're called bannerstones in the nomenclature. But bannerstone and atlatl weight is the same thing. And these are various ones of the atlatl weights. They're very rare. They're hard to find, you know. And here's another whole grouping here. This one on top, I saw that one before it came out of the ground. A friend of mine, we're up in Roxbury, New York. There's an interfluvial up there. Now, interfluvials are where two watersheds join at a point where one goes one way and one goes the other way. We're up there near Roxbury, and my friend hollered at me. I looked over, he was standing there, and I knew he'd found some, so I walked over, and that barbed horn, if you will, atlatl was sticking out of the ground. And we just stood there for a few minutes and just looked at it in the ground before we picked it up. He picked it up. Now, he's passed away, and I was able to acquire the collection, and that's why I have it.
That's awesome.
So these are various atlatl weights. These are, again stone bowls. And this is an interesting one down here. I'd like to show this because this is a shallow mortar. But guess what? When I turn it over, see what it is. It's a tree. Okay?
Yeah.
The roots would have been down here.
Yep.
And this was the tree trunk coming up.
It's cool.
But it's the only one I've seen, there probably are others, where they turned it upside down and used it this way. Isn't that cool?
That's awesome.
And you got to be aware of this kind of stuff. You got to be aware of nature. You got to be aware of your environment. You know, a lot of people wouldn't recognize that, perhaps.
What's the one with the holes in it there, Buzz?
It's the only thing in the whole collection I don't know. No kidding.
We found the thing you don't know.
It was found 50-some years ago or more down in Binghamton, New York. And a fellow came up and he gave it to me. You notice that the holes are flat in the bottom. They're flat. And look how they're kind of like dinged around on the outside edges. I don't know. And no one has ever been able to identify it. It's prehistoric, I'm sure of that.
That's interesting.
Now, there are two ways of drilling, I might add. One with a solid drill, and one with a hollow reed. Now, I have seen atlatl weights that were partially drilled with a reed. Sand and water, keep going, and then it'll drill down the side, and there'll be a stem, stone stem in the middle, where the reed went around like that and left the stem, hadn't been taken out. So I know that reeds were used like that. But solid ones, like stone drills, like those, that group of stones right over there, see the long?
These right here?
Yes, sir, yeah. Those are drills, they would make a solid hole. So both solid and reeds were used. I'd like to have you come back over here just for a minute because this material here, all of this material is from Flint Ridge, Ohio. A quarry I've been to where the Indians went there and dug this stuff out. It's like chert, like flint. And all of these things were found right here in Otsego, just down on the field down here. And these two were found 12 miles down the road at Young Station, or Trans Corners. Big blades made out of that material.
Wow.
Found its way all the way up here.
That's awesome.
It is awesome to think about. This is a cache, 175 blades that were public, done right at the quarry, and then taken out, because of course you didn't have chests of drawers where you could store your stuff away. What you did was, back in those days, you dug a hole in the ground and stored your stuff in the ground, in a hole. So it's called a cache. 175 blades found right up there near north of Utica, on the river up there. Yeah. That's a spot that my friend John found.
Cool.
Okay, I'll kind of step over a little bit here. These are pestles, and all these kinds of pestles were used in in wooden mortars. You will see sometimes you'll see things like this, particularly in Mexico, like that. On the flat, I got a metate down there. They were used like this, like that. So not all of these were used in conjunction with a wooden
Like a rolling pin.
mortar. And here's one that's broken off, but it's an eel head. Can you see it?
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. I don't have to tell you about that one. This is a bear head effigy, and this one here is a double human face. Face here and a face there. And this was found on the Scanivas Creek outside of Oneonta. Okay, these are some of the finest vessel cornerets in middle to late archaic projectile point, all done by Afton, New York. And these are all found by one guy up in the Cooperstown area along the lake. So I kept them right there. See, here's the Levanas, and there's Otter Creek, and there's a Fox Creek, and the Genesee, quite a variety of points there. These are dovetails. You don't hardly ever find any dovetails up in this neck of the woods, but they're 500 AD, 500 BC, something like that. And then all of this material are ornaments. Okay? I'm sorry about this sliding down, but the reason that this picture here is this piece right here is that one right there. Shutting the doors, the vibrations has made these things slide down a little bit. So that's an interesting piece. Gorgets and pendants is what these are. These are some of these are called Dallas points. These are found out of state, but these are very much like the narrow triangular ones I was telling you about over here. And your little eccentrics. There's a drill, a real beautiful drill there.
So they wore these around their necks, the ornaments? Is that what they did?
Well, that's what we think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
These are a variety of nice slate points. This is also kind of a slate piece. This piece is an interesting point because that was found on a bluff just on the other side of Oneonta, on the Susquehanna River, and two of the guys and myself were out all day looking, and they were tired. And so there was a spot I was thinking that ought to have some stuff on it, but it was never plowed. It was in a hedgerow adjacent to a steep bank that went down to a submarginal area. And so I said, come on, let's go on the other side here, we'll just finish the day up, we'll just do a little testing. Well, my friend Doug, we found some Orient fishtail points, and the other guy, he didn't want to dig. And no, I'm not joking. I said to him, Dean, I pointed to the ground. I said, dig right there. And he dug this up. A flared bit axe. Now, I was on one of his sites down in the Hartford area, Connecticut, and I found a pestle. And they had never found a pestle, so I didn't keep it. I gave it to him. So when he found this, he gave that to me.
So.
Now, these are birdstones, and birdstones are somewhat enigmatic. Nobody really has come up with an absolute, unequivocal use of these things, but they got to be ornamental. They're drilled on each side and attached to something.
Okay.
Maybe a headdress, something else, I don't know. But they're very desirable objects and very, very scarce. A lot more scarce than Atlatls. This one here is, the colors are kind of a cream color and a black. When you see those kinds of inclusions, it's called porphyry. And porphyry is an inclusion in a harder rock. It's two different minerals. And things that are made like this one here are very desirable to collectors because of the coloration. Okay. These are tube pipes, and these predate the pipes that we have over here because they're just tubes. And tobacco was shoved in one end, and they were just smoked like that. Bingo.
No kidding.
Yeah. And they're made of Ohio pipestone. And they're like 580, 500 BC, something like
I
that.
think we still use those today.
Yeah, it could be.
A bong.
So then it goes into a variety of really cool stuff, but not necessarily indigenous material. This piece is a fluted point closed user. It's not a fluted point, but it's a biface, a big knife. It's made of Macungie jasper from Macungie, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
That piece came from the famous Bull Brook site, which is on a terrace just on the edge of Ipswich, Massachusetts, on the Atlantic seacoast. And that piece, this little line that comes down through there,
Yeah.
and there's a little line here, that's all Macungie jasper. This piece came from the fluted clothes point there in the famous Bull Brook site. That's been pictured in a book and all. It wasn't pictured in the book before I got it, but I gave it to Dr. Grambley, who published a book, and that's in the book. This I found right up here at the corner where the bend of the river is up here. Jasper is not too common. These two pieces here were found in Afton, New York. These are the earliest. These are Clovis points, and they're all fluted, the little flutes. And these are trapezoidal, oh, sorry, not that one, but this one. And these are all of the same time period.
When does Clovis date?
12,000 BC, so it makes it 14,000 years.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah.
Insane.
These are all local here, New York State and Einbrecher local. These are other fluted points, excepting for these two, which are of the Paleo-era period, but they're called Bull-tongued Simpsons from Florida.
Okay.
So I've been down in Florida and I'm These are all Folsom points, very small points. They were the first fluted, they were the top. Okay. These are Bull-tongued Simpsons, and those are Folsom points. And the Folsom points were the first fluted point that was discovered in Folsom, New Mexico. And they found these points embedded in bison antiquus kill sites. But they are later than Clovis. Clovis are these types. See, the flutes like that, the Clovis. They're about 2,000 years older than Folsom. Folsom is 10,000. Clovis is 12,000. We're talking BC here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or were they hunting mammoths with
Oh
the
yeah.
things?
Oh yeah. Big.
Incredible.
Oh yeah. Yeah. What a time to be alive.
Gee.
And in this case, there's a variety of really great stuff. This is a Noonan knife. Now, I got that from a fellow who found it on the Atlatls swamp south of Gainesville. And I met him because I was on a lookout for a flint knapper that was doing work down in Florida. Consequently, that guy wasn't there, but I met the guy that found that because this other fellow was renting a property, a building on his property. So I knew about this knife. At the time it was found, and I've got a whole paperwork on this, at the time it was found, it was allegedly thought to be one of the 5 finest artifacts ever found in the state of Florida.
Wow.
Well, I always wanted to buy it, and I was always very polite with him. Wonderful guy, his name was Tom Ritchie, near Floral City, Florida. And one time I was down there, and I said, Tom, go in the house and get the big Noonan piece. He called it a spear point, but it's really a knife. I bring it out because I want to take a photograph of you. So he did. He went in, he brought it out, he stood there with it, and I took the picture. And I said, like I always did, well, Tom, don't forget, if you're going to sell it, let me know. And there was this moment of silence. And he said to me, I need a new roof.
Now's the time.
That was the only time I was going to get. It didn't matter how much it was going to be. that was my opportunity, and I had to do it,
Yeah, absolutely.
and that's what I did.
Oh, that's awesome.
And here it is.
That is awesome. That's one of your prizes, huh?
It's one of my prizes, and he also is a very, very, very great guy. He is a biologist by trade, by profession, but he works for Lindbad Travel. Lindbad is a company that takes people all around the world into exotic and sometimes dangerous places.
Wow.
I mean, special places.
Wow.
And he has gone into these places.
Wow. Sounds like interesting
Yeah.
life.
Oh, yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, he's a pretty neat guy. This blade here is a votive blade. It's never meant to be used. It's a wonderful blade. You can look through it. It's like mahogany. You can look through it. Light shines through it.
Wow.
All this other stuff here. These are different kinds of paleo stage material, but not from this area, from Illinois, the Central States region. And then harpoon all around. A lot of it's Eskimo material. It's very early material.
There's a Skinner. That's a Skinner, right?
That's a Skinner. Yeah, you can use that as a Skinner. It's also referred to as a move, but that's true. Yeah.
Pretty awesome.
These are Eskimoian or Inuit, except for that one black bear right there, which is a Haida, Northwest Coast effigy. These are later, but I happen to like certain ones.
Mm-hmm.
And if they strike me, then I buy them and
That's great.
Okay, these are just a variety of large blades. They're all archaic blades. Below here is a variety of other things, a cat pipe and 3 human effigies there, a little animal effigy, stone bowl. And this is a stone bowl with a rattlesnake on the top. When you turn it over, it's all hollowed out underneath.
Cool.
Frog pipe there and so on. These are mostly gouges and adzes. Now there's the gouges. You can see the gouge coming through. When they go all the way through, when the gouge goes all the way through to the end, it's called a celery stalk. These items down here, you see if there's bevels?
Mm-hmm.
Those are called beveled adzes. They're flat on one side, beveled on the other. The Lamoka people made these. The Lamoka dates, like I said, around 4,000 years ago. I found an undisturbed Lamoka site, never plowed. It was below the plaza, which is up the road here. I dug it for 2 years. The first year I dug it with an honorarium from the state, and the second year it was dug by the New York State Museum and Science Service crew, which I was head of the crew. But Dr. Funk, I told you about Dr. Funk previously, he was kind of like working under me for that day. He was an incredible guy.
Yeah.
Funk was the best guy, period. But anyway, these beveled adzes are indicative of the Lamoka culture. One thing again about Dr. Ritchie dug the famous Lamoka site, which is at Lamoka Lake, New York, in the Finger Lakes region. And in his book, Archaeology of New York State, the prehistory of archaeology in New York State, he states that the Lamoka culture did not have Atlatl weights.
Mm-hmm.
When I dug the site up there with 3 separate levels, it's all been published, this has been, we found Atlatl weights, unequivocally associated with the Lamoka culture.
Wow.
And also, he dated the Lamoka culture at 35 to 4500 BC, and the culture was only around 4,000. So we actually changed the chronology for that culture right here.
Wow.
That's so
that
cool.
was the Matisse site. And then there's a variety of wonderful stuff, a whole bunch of Jasper stuff that's falling apart, drills and so on.
That's corn in them.
Yes, it is.
Look at that.
Yeah, 17th century, so those are from the 1600s, a corn.
Wow.
See, there are some times when chemistry comes into play. When you get things that are carbonized, the carbonization preserves perishable materials. Okay? This is, I'll just point this out. These, most collectors would not recognize these for what they are. They're gorges. They're tied in the center. A long line, fishing line, comes off, and they're baited with balls. These are made to catch big fish, like mussels, a big pike and like that, because you didn't need a fish hook. They would come along, they latch on there, they swallow it down, and you get crosswise in their gullet and you pull them out. Doesn't have to be a fish hook. Doesn't have to be a harpoon, a gorge.
No kidding. That's awesome.
See, there again. So here, once again, there's a whole variety of really cool stuff in here. Platform pipe, an effigy, a boat stone, and a bird pipe. There's a very interesting pipe right there of a passed away woman, obviously, but she has a palette on her knees, and she has tattoos. That's what those are on her forehead. Those are tattoos. I might just, for the fun of it, tell you about, this is the clamshell, or oyster shell, excuse me. And these are oysters. See the little cluster at the top?
Yeah.
I found all those eating raw oysters over the years.
Really?
Yes, sir.
They deserve a case.
Yeah.
That's really fun of it, to break it up. You know.
That's cool.
This is all pre-Columbian material here, Mayan material, and these are votive blades.
Wow.
This is also same way. The Muscala effigy down here is called these axe gods sometimes. These are eccentrics. This is obsidian. This is made as an ornament. It's drilled through here, made as an ornament. This material from here over to, let's see, make sure I get this right here is Danish.
Oh.
Viking era Danish artifact.
Holy
And all
smokes.
these blades that are down here
Yeah.
are also Danish. And these are struck off, big cores of flint, struck off and picked up and used just like that. They're as sharp as can be. You can cut with those. You can dismember an animal with those. They're the first, I think, this is something I've come up with. These are called the first disposable artifact. You use it, you strike it off the blade, it's sharp, you use it until it gets down, you throw it away, and strike off another one, use it again, throw it away when it gets. Sometimes, however, these blades are retouched.
Okay.
Okay, and they're used for secondary. These are Danish axes. That's a canoe axe. You can see the canoe shape. And bronze pieces there. This is a big Danish axe here. And you talked about the Neanderthal. That's the one I found in Spain on top. These three here are all Neanderthal axes.
What date are the Neanderthals? Like
They're
30?
about 35 to 40,000 years ago.
Holy smoke. It's incredible.
That one there, I was walking through this piece of ground 2 days before I was going to leave, and it was kind of a brushy area and spots of bare earth. And I found this thing laying down there. I reached down, I picked it up, I looked at it. Yeah, it can't be. I threw it back down. I literally did. I walked away a little ways away, and I said, Buzz, spoke to myself, you got to go back and pick that up again and look at it again. I picked it up and looked at it. I could see, oh, geez. Nap back on both sides. And it was exactly, I couldn't believe that I had found a Neanderthal hand axe.
It's incredible.
But that's the way it was. These are some more blades, and you can see these were knives that were used. Here's one in a socket, an antler socket.
Wow.
Pretty cool stuff. They actually were using bows and arrows over there. And these are actual arrowheads. And they're harder to find when I was looking around for stuff over there than the other stuff. This is all African, North Africa. And some beautiful, beautiful stuff. I actually looked through thousands of pieces of African material and selected out these things. They were the best of their type.
That's gorgeous. Love the color on them.
Yeah, a lot of color. And then it kind of gets into a different situation over here. All of this stuff, I just want to fill up the space. This has all been found right around Otago.
Cool.
All this stuff, mostly archaic. And there's a print of a mastodon. And these are Southwest material, kachinas and rattles, fetishes, the pottery. I started on the pottery only kind of superficially, but years ago I found this Zuni or Cochiti, it's hard to know which one or the other, owl. Now you will see these owls today out there looking around. You'll see them.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? They're going to be round-bodied. No feet. You're not going to find any feet. That one had feet. That one there is probably pre-tourist. See, what happened was that the Southwest people out there, the Zunis and the Acoma people and the Navajos, they became subject, really so, to the tourist trade.
Mm-hmm.
Back when people were first going out there with the old, 1918 cars and stuff like that, and they were making stuff and the tourists wanted to buy. Then they found out that the tourists wanted things that were a little different than what they were making.
Mm-hmm.
So they adapted to make the things the tourists wanted so they could sell it to them and make money. But that piece there, it predates all that. So that's what started me on all this stuff here. And I've had a lot of fun with this, but most of the stuff I see that's of that nature from that time period and those cultures, I don't care to have. But this is all kind of special stuff.
What's the drum, Buzz? What's the drum?
It's a Plains Indian drum, and it's a real McCoy, 19th century drum.
Wow.
This is the drum stick that's used.
Wow.
These are bolos, and these are real bows. These are the real McCoy. These are the kinds of bows that were used when they were shooting people and cavalry people against the Indians. Wow. Those are real arrows with the real arrow tips. They're all paint decorated like that.
Incredible.
Pipe tomahawks. So that's stuff.
You got to show the headdress here.
This is the
Check this out.
the Stowaway. I was really excited about this piece. This is historic, but early historic. I don't mean 17th century. It's probably maybe 1820s or 30s, something like that. You see it has metal bands here. It's all handmade. It's just a really terrific piece with the skins down here on the side.
Is that a copper band on it?
Yeah, it is, see?
Wow.
Yeah. Iroquois Gastoway, you just don't see them. You don't see them.
It's amazing.
I said, well, I'm going to keep that piece.
Absolutely amazing.
I'll get it balanced back on here. There we go. Okay. Just to kind of conclude here, this is a chunk of actual knappable material within the limestone matrix. This came from Cherry Valley, New York. The limestone up there, limestone is where you find, people call it flint. Technically speaking, you should call it chert, C-H-E-R-T, because the limestone here in this country, North America, where so-called flint, and again I say it really should be called chert, is found, is hundreds of thousands of years later than old world limestone, where true flint is found. Now, I have been to Grimes Graves, to the quarries over there where you get down in and into the limestone and they extracted the flint over there. I've been there. I've been down in the tunnels and looked around in there. This is an example of that band right there is the kind of stuff that you find mostly around here. It looks a little bluish, but when it's out and made into artifacts, it turns a gray color. Wow. That's what that is.
So
And this is an Iroquois skin stretching board. And these are fur trade era sashes.
okay.
And they're all handmade and they're all seamed in the center. And they're exceedingly rare.
Wow.
They're like 1790,
It's
1810.
amazing that exists.
Could you also talk about the wampum?
I can tell you about that. This belt on the bottom is a copy.
Okay.
Now, I have had my hands on the original, which was at one time in the State Museum. There was a woman back in the very first part of the last century that bought a lot of, and legally bought wampum from the Iroquois. And she gave them to the State Museum. And there's a booklet that's out, that's printed about that. It's an old booklet. You might find it sometime. It's a bulletin, one of the bulletins. This is so-called the Washington Belt. It's, it's like this long. Well, I was up in the Grand River Reservation with my friends up there, and they were showing me their museum up there. It's a wonderful museum. And we're walking along, all of a sudden, boom, here's this belt. Not that one, but one just exactly like it. And I said, holy mackerel. I said, I know that's not the original one. What's the story on that? And they said, well, we know Mr. Miracle. He's a Iroquois, and he made it. He made 3. He said, one is here. I mean, in the museum. Yeah. I said, you mean there's 2 more? He said, yes. I said, well, boy, I would like to be able to buy one of those. So I eventually did. This is a copy of one of only 3 that he made. It's a copy of the original, which was in the State Museum. Now, at the time when the Seneca people in Salamanca, they owned a whole tract of land out there that was Indian territory that was never sold to the state of New York. They leased it to the state of New York. But the lease ran out and it reverted back to the Indians. Now imagine, all the villages of Salamanca had white people living on it, farms and businesses and villages and everything else. It was a real problem.
Yeah.
So there was a real protest about it, and eventually there was a compromise made by the state of New York. Now, somewheres in my paperwork somewhere, I have put away a letter. Somehow it left the office of Senator Sheffer. I don't know anything about that, but it ended up in my hands. Mm-hmm. And the top of the letter, it said to the right-hand side of the letter, it said, at the request of Governor Cuomo. Now that was the father.
Mario.
It was sent to Senator Sheffer. 2 unnamed Iroquois people and Sheffer made a deal. And the deal was that to settle this dispute out in the Salamanca region, the Wampum collection was going to be given to the Iroquois. Now, I can't say given back because this white lady was the one who had bought it all fair and square and gave it to the New York State Museum. Mm-hmm. Now, everything that belongs to the state belongs to us. We're the owners, Mm-hmm. We're the ones who pay the taxes. We're the ones. So when the state wants to get rid of something, such as equipment, what do? They auction it. Mm-hmm. Because that's a fair way of deaccessioning state holdings and giving everybody an opportunity to buy something. No, not in this case. They gave all that collection of wampum to the Iroquois. I don't know specifically who it was, but I know they gave it to the Iroquois.
Wow.
This belt today, in today's market, the original belt, mm-hmm. I think would bring well over $1 million should it ever had come to the marketplace to be sold. It is probably one of the best, absolute best Iroquois examples of wampum belts in existence, if not the best.
That's amazing.
It's gone.
Nobody knows who has it. Amazing. Amazing.
Yep.
Well, Buzz, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much. I know everybody out there, thank you. So,
well, you're welcome
for the time.
Share it.
Yeah, this is wonderful. Could you just swing and look at the canoe real quick for people?
Of course.
That's pretty neat, huh?
Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where'd you dig that out of, Bud?
Well, I was on my way back from Augusta, Maine, and I always ask about any material. The guy said, well, I know a guy's got a dugout canoe and it's in his garage. So I went, met the guy, and he had it in his garage, and I negotiated with him and brought it back on top of my van. It's the real thing.
What a life you've had. You got to do something you love, huh? This is wonderful.
Yes, I feel very grateful about
This
that.
is wonderful.
And,
Well,
in a way, not that it's a burden, because it isn't, but I'm obligated to share it with people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only going to hold it for a little bit. When I'm gone, it's gone too, so I'm not taking it with me.
Buzz, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're
Thank
neat.
you so much for the history lesson. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed it, okay? And we'll see you next time. Leave comments down below, and I'm sure you enjoyed it. Real special. We'll see you later.